All right. I love balance because it's very difficult to focus on anything else when you're focusing on balance. It's a good in the moment kind of practice. So you are circling and circling the other way. Okay, we don't often do the middle one, but if you keep the lower still and you just kind of stir the thoracic area, it changes the way you use your low back and kind of informs that QL in a different way, the quadratus muscle, and circling the other way. And it is also a learned thing. It may be like at first it's hard for you to figure out how to do it, but since when we do Tai Chi, we don't move the hips around when we may change the direction of the arms. You know, you fold your hip and you might turn your waist. You have to kind of learn how to individuate the movement of your thorax from your lower body. So it's useful to do this circling to be able to learn how to use the muscles in that way. And then last, ear to the shoulder, relax forward, ear to the shoulder. Turn the palm out. All right, let's do a little bit of the warm up, the hip warm up. So I'm kind of liking that when we're sitting in the horse stance to actually do the hips while you're in the horse stance, because the fact of the matter is you're going to do more of your hip changes while in a stance. So this is very different than taking your hips and circling them in the middle of your body while you're in a normal standing posture. So side to side glides. It's a very nice way to get a little bit more mobility in the hip socket. And then tailbone down, tailbone back and tailbone under. So anterior, posterior pelvic tilt. We're always trying to find that level pelvis as we're moving through the form. But that means that there's a constant change in the hip joints to be able to keep bringing the center of the pelvis to the center of the earth. Constant language going on inside the hip joints. And then trying to go across the diagonal, a little bit different information. And then going across the other way. And then go back to circling. Hopefully just feels like, oh, it's looser in the joint. And then circle in the other direction. Okay, so we're going to do the thoracic, principal movements. So holding the arms out, we're just push out through your elbows, wrists, and fingers, and let yourself stretch fingertip to fingertip, and then soften and come back in. The elbows bend, the fingertips come in. You want to push out through your elbows like you have opposing energy in order to keep this open space. A little elbow push out and fingertip coming in. So here we start with the vertical direction. And again, I'm isolating my waist movement. There's some folding at my hips, but I'm mostly trying to get the stretch in my low back. I don't really have a change going on in my knees. Okay, so sometimes people do this. They start bending their knees to go forward, and you don't isolate the low back that way. You want to keep your knees pretty stable as though you're kind of buried in sand up to your hip crease. And really isolate the low back. And then the upper back. And low back and upper back. It teaches you how to keep your stability in your lower body, though your upper body is changing. And it's a great stretch for the low back and opening up the chest. And then we go into rotation. So low back, middle back, upper back. Turning the heart towards maybe your baby toe on that foot. And then adding a little bit of an imaginary push through your elbow and turning your head to look over that elbow. It just gets a little bit more action in the upper part of your spine through the cervicals to the head. And again, I'm really watching that my lower body feels like it's really rooted so that my upper body can have more expression of turn and change. Okay, and then I'm going to do side bend, side bend. Side bendability. And again, if it feels too crunchy to come down on one side, instead think of lengthening from your hip to your armpit. And that'll actually give you a little bit more fold from your thorax rather than just in your lower waist area. But it's still side bending the spine. All these things are kind of essential to keep, that spinal health and the nerve roots free. So the joints need to move in every direction that they're designed to move. Okay, so then we've got every direction we go into circling. Open the back, side bend and rotate. Open the chest, side bend and rotate. Open the low back. Okay, and we're gonna go the other way. And then come back up. Okay, so hopefully you just feel everything in your upper body circulating more easily, which helps your spine to lift and lengthen. So we can work on balance. So balance we're going to leave the arms out of it for the moment. Of course, when I level my pelvis, that's the first thing, getting the pelvic floor to face the center of the earth. When I bend my knees, it comes from the low back opening, sending the femurs forward and into a knee bend that's not too forward of your knees, right? So this is knee bend over my knees. It's hard on my knees, and I'm not really getting any change to my low back. I open up the low back, I just use a little bit of core support, open up the low back. That sends the femurs forward. And I stop so that I don't go over my knees. I feel rooted. I feel if I bounce, I do the tree, which we haven't done in a while, shake the tree. If I bounce, I usually find just the right spot, not too low and not too high. It's the education for how you keep your legs springy. So this is a teaching of Alex. If you bend your knees more and you try to bounce, you see that the energy is only going like in one direction. It doesn't go up and down through the body. You feel it more in your knees and down below. And if you're kind of straight and you bounce, the energy feels like it's above in your body, but it isn't bouncing evenly up and down from your feet to your crown. So when you open up the back and send the femurs forward, find that middle way. If this too bent, I'm getting too much feedback below. Too straight, the energy is getting caught above. The middle way is to have this middle area open and able to be sort of a trampoline for that bouncing energy. Okay, when it feels like you can feel that movement, that shock wave go through your whole body, you have that natural spring. Okay, so it's kind of like if you had a spring and you have a spring and it's a functioning spring and you can really feel that like a bed spring. If you stretch the spring out, it doesn't go back very well, too stretched out. If it's compressed in anywhere, it affects the whole spring. It doesn't come back to fullness. Having the right sense of springiness is having that right correct bend, opening of the back and the correct bend to the knee. And that's cultivated over time, because as areas of your body open, you're going to find that the sense of your springiness in your legs changes. So you're always kind of cultivating that. But shake the tree is a good way to find it, because your body will find it more naturally. You want to be comfortable. The body wants to be comfortable. So you'll find the middle way, not too bent, not too straight. You know, if you're absolutely straight and you try to bend, all you feel is the jiggle from your dantian up. And if it's too bent, all you feel is your knees and down. So little bit of core, little open of the back. This is a very, very important point, because we want to have healthy knees and healthy energy through the whole body. A softening of the knee and a bounce that you feel more evenly through your whole body. Okay, so that's important, because that facilitates the energy being open enough through your joints that when you go into your standing balance pose, you're on more open joints, which means you have, more fluid in your joint. You're kind of sitting on that open energy rather than a compressed energy. This is compressed energy. Too straight is a different kind of compressed energy. Okay, that's like the cylinder is too tight, core channel is too tight. So I want to find the middle way. Okay, and then when I have that middle way, I'm stacking my body up on those open joint spaces that have loft, but also the ability to still sink. If I'm too straight, then I can't sink my energy. And if I'm too bent, I can't lift my energy. So I want to have that middle. I turn, and let's leave the hands out of it for the moment. And then just focus on this core channel, finding the middle of the foot, right? If you're starting too bent, your lower body is going to crowd, your upper body is going to crowd into your lower body. And if you shift over and you're too straight, your energy is going to go up. And when you go to stand on one leg, you're going to start wheeling around because you're top heavy. So that middle way, turn, shift. Think about you sitting on open joint spaces. You feel the internal lift, but enough of the openness of your back and enough bend to your knee to feel the sinking energy into the earth. It's both. So I go crown over, tail over foot. I drop my tailbone a little bit more just to facilitate this knee bending and rising and picking up the knee. So I know that I beat you guys over the head with this crown over, tail over, foot, but it really means take your head, keep it over your thorax, and keep that over your pelvis, and then move the whole thing to the middle of your foot. And I can't just bend my knee to move to the middle of my foot, because then my knee goes over my toe and I start to get, feedback from my knee. As I move to that foot, I need to open up my lower back more as I go over to the foot, right? So I am absorbing some of that forward energy by opening my back. And that keeps me more aligned in the middle. Once I found that position, you can just pick up your knee, come up onto the toe and put your heel down. Just do that a couple of times. And if you can do that without wavering in the midline, then you're probably, crown over, tail over, foot enough. Then it's an energetic thing, almost like somebody's pulling your tailbone down. You have a string on your tailbone, they're pulling it into the earth. Feel that lengthening of your lower back as you pick up your knee in front of you. Because again, this is not just, the knee isn't just going up, but as far as being out in space, the energy is going out and up. So I find my crown over tail over foot. I open my back. I sink the energy of my tailbone, and I open my back a little bit more to counterbalance all this weight of my leg moving forward into space. So those are really big, it's a practice that your body actually does without you thinking about it. And when we do this in Tai Chi, we're actually trying to think about it in order to correct problems we might be having with balance. So seeing that my leg not only goes up, so something's got to go down for that to go up, little energy going through the tailbone into the earth, like that line getting a little bit more strong so that I can lift my knee, but also because this leg is forward in space, I have to relax the kidney back, open up the low back to carry that weight. Otherwise, what it looks like is, okay, you might drop your tailbone, but then you bend into your leg because you're not counterbalancing that energy be out in front of you. So drop the tailbone and relax the back more as the leg goes out in front of you. So the more flexibility you develop in your low back, the more you're going to be able to open that energy as the tailbone, most of you have that, okay, tailbone down. But relaxing the kidney area into my hand, as my hand is back there, is counterbalancing the fact that all this leg weight is now in front of me. So every movement we make has an equal and opposite reaction. So I'm going to open my back to send my knees forward in space. I open my back to send my knees forward in space. So I didn't bend my knees. I open my back to send my knees forward in space. Okay, equal and opposite reaction. I want to turn my foot. You open up both hips. So it isn't just, oh, I'm going that way, because that's how you yank your knee with you. You want to separate hip from hip internally, both hip joints. So just do this with my hands. Both hip joints are externally rotating against one another. That's very different than my mind thinking, oh, I'm going over here. Because now there's no support back where I need the support to come from. I keep my knee with my toe. That's one of the ways that we say this. But you want to feel into your hip joints that both hip joints are rotating out for you to do this move. Equal and opposite action. Then I shift my weight, crown over, tail over, foot. So you take a moment, you keep your foot on the ground and you just try to feel your head over your thorax. You can circle them, your head and then your thorax and then your pelvis, and see if you can't feel like those masses are lining up for you. Okay, and you can lift up through your crown a little bit more, because when I accept my weight on my foot, that's another equal and opposite. You're putting more weight on one foot. The way to support that is to just feel a little more length through your cervicals, through your spine, the down and the up, the tailbone going down. And now, relax the back as though you're sitting on a stool so that you can send the weight of that leg forward. I mean, that's a lot of things, right? It's not about like, okay, yeah, right, just line up my masses and it's all good. It isn't. As far as your Tai Chi body is concerned, you're always balancing one outside effect for another, opposite effect. So my back opens for my knees to go a little forward in space. I make the turn. I open both hip joints to turn the foot out. I'm going to shift my weight, crown over, tail over, foot. So I want to keep this vertical. And oftentimes, we're in the form, the head might be over the foot, and what you have to do is not say, oh yeah, the pelvis has to get over the foot, and keep your head forward of your pelvis, because then you have this. You have to kind of figure out how to move the pelvis over the foot and bring the head back in line with the thorax and the pelvis and then the foot. And it's fine if you're in your form and you have a slight slant to your body, but you have to release that. Get your foot to your head to your foot, and then move your tailbone, your pelvis in underneath between them. Generally, your thorax will come in place because it's between the two. All right, so I'm going to just say that again. I'm going to open my back to send my knees forward. And I'm going to take both hip joints and rotate them away from each other. Now, you don't see the movement here. It is an inside movement, and this is the outside movement. But both hips are turning away from each other. Then I might move my head towards my foot and then say, oh, but I have to get my pelvis in under here. Really drop my tailbone down, feel the masses line up. You can check that by just picking up your heel. Okay, a little bit more draw down from your tailbone, which is going to be equal to a draw up in your crown. So if you only draw down, if you really drop your tailbone, but you don't lift your crown, you get a lot more pounds of pressure down on your foot. So learning how to drop the tailbone and lift internally through the crown, you're not going to get more pressure on your foot. You're just going to get alignment. Okay, so you drop the tailbone and lift the crown. And now, as though somebody put a stool in here, and you could relax your back a little bit more to be able to bring the leg forward in space as well. Lots of things to think about. So we're going to go do the other side. Okay, so I'm just in standing. I need to relax the back to send the knee forward in space. So the energy is going back and forward. Okay, so back and forward, and then both hips, not just one. That's what it looks like when you just move one, like you're opening a door. Something is not quite right. You're not getting the splitting energy. You want to split one hip from the other. You deepen your feeling of keeping that knee with the toe. There's a slight rotation of your pelvis, so the hip is externally rotating inside the socket. I might open this hip and move over, and my head might find my foot, but then I need to make sure that the pelvis gets in between my head and my foot. Okay, you know you want to pick up this leg, so you think more energy down through your tailbone, but more energy up equally through your crown. And you can pick up your heel and make sure that you have, actually, go ahead and circle your hips and just feel what it feels like to let go of the holding pattern in your hip joint so that you can release the hip to find alignment. So if I'm going to hang on and I move over, I'm too stuck in my hips to make the change. Crown up, tailbone down. Go ahead and just circle your hips so you stop gripping with your hips. And then you're more easily to align, it's more easily align the masses. Okay, so now I've got tailbone down, crown up. Okay, more energy down in the tail, and then relax the middle of your lumbars. You have to kind of practice actually sitting on stools and see what happens with your back when you sit on the stool. It just opens up through the lumbars. That energy is going back to send the leg forward. Okay, we'll do this one more time on this side. Okay, energy opens back slightly to send the knees forward slightly. Both hip joints are opening against one another, splitting energy. I'm aligning, so my head might get to my foot first, but then I want to relax the inside of my pelvis to allow the pelvis to drop in between my head and my foot. You can pick up your heel and see if you got enough weight over there to actually execute the next part of the move. But then it's draw down through your tail and up through your crown. That helps your alignment. And then relax the back to send the knee forward. Okay, so it's a challenging thing to do balance. And sometimes what we do is say, uh-oh, I have to pick up my leg. And sometimes the energy will go up into your upper body and into your shoulders. What you want to do is think the opposite. Relax down to let that up happen. All right. So one last time, I open the back and let the knees go forward. I open the hips against one another. So you want to feel the activity inside this hip joint as you make the obvious outside movement with your leg. Just pick up your heel. You can feel that as you open up the hip first, right? As you get your head to your foot, picking up your heel and letting your hips relax, your pelvis relax, so you get the pelvis in between your head and your foot. And then just go ahead and circle your hips there. So you're just training yourself to let go of the gripping. Because there's a lot of gripping sometimes when you're trying to balance. You're like, uh-oh, I have to balance. And that brace is what causes you to lose your balance. Just relaxing that and making sure you have enough alignment over that foot, a little bit more down through your tailbone and up through your crown. Just feel the length of that. That helps you to find a good core alignment. And then relax as though you're sitting on a stool to bring your leg up, forward into space. All right. So there's a continual down as the knee comes up, but there's also a relaxing of the mid-low back in order to send the energy forward. So the way to self-correct, if you're practicing, your form well enough, if you're having a problem in any one place, ask yourself, what is the major direction of the action? And then search for the equal and opposite reaction. So of course, when we go to one leg, you want to have the security of the floor. There is sinking energy down, but to stay in balance, there has to be an equal lift up from the dantian up to my crown to feel open so that I don't collapse my structure. This is collapsing my structure. Okay. This is never having sunk the middle way. Have my toes in. This is collapsing my structure. Sink my tailbone, get wide in my back as I get narrow in the front. This is keeping my structure. Same with the arms. If I squeeze the armpits together, if my fingers want to come in, my elbows have to go out. I keep my structure. Okay, and then of course there's the constant lift of the spine and opening up the low back and lifting up at the base of your skull, which keeps your axial skeleton open. So keeping the internal open. All right.